Hi everyone, my name is Shash. I'm the developer of the Unity Drape simulator. I'm going to quickly walk you through the working mechanics of this software now. So essentially this is a software that simulates the hand layout process of woven prepreg. Uh, so we're modeling a sheet of woven prepreg using a pin jointed net, as you can see on your screen now. So the concept here is that in woven prepreg we have fibers or toes running in two different directions which are perpendicular to each other. So in this case we have fibers running in the x direction and also fibers running in the z direction if you refer to the coordinate system over here which we're using in this simulation. So the crossover points of these toes or fibers are modeled using nodes which are in white color. So that's the sort of basic concept of the simulation. Now let's move on to the functions that are available. So the first function is this help function. Obviously you can disable it and enable it quite easily by clicking on the help menu item. I advise you keep this on, especially when you're using the software for the first few times. It can be very useful, and whatever I'm explaining to you now, most of what I'm saying now is available in this help menu. So the first item on the main menu is switch mold, is the switch mold function. So I have included 5 different mold shapes in this trial version, but obviously in the full version you can load in any mold shape you want in the STL format. So the next function is the mold alterations menu. Here you can rotate your mold by setting the RX, RY, RZ values. You can scale the mold by changing the scale value. And you can toggle the mold mesh on and off quite easily using this particular toggle over here. I'll explain to you why this might be useful as we go on in this tutorial. So the next function is the reset net function. So here you set your desired parameters for a net and you click on generate, and it will generate you a new net based on the parameters you entered. So the net resolution, it's quite straightforward. If you use a higher net resolution, you get a net with more nodes. Obviously you can change the length of the net as well. I'm just going to change the length in the z direction. You can see how that affected the net. And you can also set a thickness for the net. Now this thickness becomes relevant when you start to add in multiple layers and you start modeling the thickness of the net. This will become clear as we move on. And also you can set different node diameters. So if you increase the node diameter, you can see your net having a larger, the nodes having a larger diameter. I advise you keep this at a value around 20 millimeters. The smaller the value, the smaller the node diameter that you use, the more accurate your final solution will be. But there is a problem with this. If you use very small node diameters, it becomes a bit difficult for you to interact with individual nodes, and it'll become clear why this is an issue as we move forward in this tutorial. Then there is a locking angle. So the concept here is that if an individual cell is sheared beyond this locking angle, we consider that cell to contain a certain amount of wrinkling. This will also become clearer in this tutorial later on. Finally, there's a drape resolution. Lower the drape resolution, more accurate your final solution is, but your time to solution will increase significantly if you use very small drape resolutions. Keep it as it is for now, and if you want to play around with it, feel free to do so. So let's let's reset this net to its default values. Let's generate a new net like that. So the next function is the net alterations function. Here, once you select this, you now have control over the net. You can move the net around. You can also change the fiber orientation like that. And these four functions over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly change the mold shape so I can explain what they do. So if you moved your net away from the mold and you want to align this net with the borders of your mold, what you do is you use these functions over here to do that. Please feel free to play around with them. And finally, you have a toggle which says move net. Now this becomes useful because sometimes what happens is, once you've moved the net to the desired position and you want to close a menu or open a different menu, what happens is you start clicking somewhere else and the net moves. So how you tackle this problem is you position your net, you toggle this option, and then you can click anywhere you want in the software and the net will not move from that point. Right, so let's actually go ahead and perform a drape action. So to do that, before we do that, I'm going to get rid of the help menu for now, just so that we have a full screen available to see what's going on, right? Also, one other thing is you've got camera controls over here. As you can see, you can look at your mold in different directions, and obviously you can rotate the camera using the right mouse button. If you click and hold the right mouse button, you can rotate the camera wave. You can move the camera around by pressing and holding the middle mouse button. Right, so let's move on to performing a drape. So the first step in performing a drape is you position your net where you want it to be. I advise you use this particular weave, so the top weave. Once you've positioned your net, you have two options. You can either select your boundary conditions using this BC Auto, or you have another option called BC Manual. So as the name suggests, BC Auto sets the boundary conditions automatically for you. If you use BC Manual, you'll have to set it the boundary conditions manually. So for now, let's just use BC Auto. So once you go to the BC Auto, you can see some nodes have changed colors. So this red node is called the seed node. This is where you start. This is the starting point of your boundary conditions, and from this red seed node, you have two toes which are fixed, based on where your seed node is. So you have a warp toe which is fixed and a weft toe which is also fixed, or which will be fixed in the future once we call the drape action. So you can select different seed nodes by clicking the middle mouse button. So you can see how the boundary conditions are changing as I click on different seed nodes. You can also adjust the boundaries on the warp and weft fixed toes by clicking on particular nodes. More information on this is available in the help menu. I advise you to read that. For now, I'm just gonna use the default option. So the first step is to select a seed node, and you will have your automatic boundary conditions. So we'll perform a quick drape. So once you've selected the seed node, next step is to make sure that this particular seed node is in contact with the mold before you call the drape action. For example, if I call the drape action now, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to give me an error message in the bar over here saying the seed node must be in contact with the mold. Go back to BC Auto or BC Manual to fix this. So I go back to BC Auto, and there are two ways to do this. You can either use the up and down arrows on the keyboard. So if I press and hold the up and down, if I press and hold the down arrow, you can see the seed node is moving down. There we go. Now we made contact with the mold. Once you make contact with the mold, you can see a black dot appearing on the top of your seed node. This is to tell you that the node has made contact. Obviously, you saw that it took a bit of time, so there's a shortcut to do this. So instead of pressing the down arrow, I can just click on this option over here, and it automatically moves the seed node towards the mold. Once you've done that, you can now call the drape action. So now you can see how the software simulating the drape based on the boundary conditions that you set. So how the simulation works is it first lays down the warp and weft fixed nodes, and then based on that it figures out where the other nodes should be on the mold. So once you've completed a drape, there are a few options that becomes available to you. One of them is the shear plus DFM option. So now you can see a shear distribution on the net. So this is where disabling the mold mesh becomes useful, because you can see you can't really see some of the cells perfectly. So if you disable the mold mesh, now you can see all the cells. If you point, or if you use the mouse pointer and point at different cells, you can see the shear distribution of individual cells at the bottom bar here. So that is that. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna set a higher drape resolution and gonna show you how that affects the time to solution. So if I repeat the same process, you can see that the drape simulation has now become significantly faster than before. Right, so I'm going to show you another option. So if you reset the net, if I choose to drape just a portion of the net, so like that, I change the boundary conditions. If I choose to drape it that way, the software is only going to drape that part of the net. Now another option becomes available for me, which is the trim net function, right? So I can trim off the parts of the net that I didn't drape. Right, so that is that. So another option that becomes available to me at this point is to add a second net, right? So if I choose add net and I say generate, what's going to happen is it's going to model the thickness of the previous layer first. So it's now shown in blue color. Once you've done that, if you go to layers, now you can remove that previous layer as well. Okay. Right, so I'm gonna reset everything back to the default values. So now I'm gonna walk you through the BC manual mod. So BC manual is very useful when if you want your boundary conditions to be set diagonally, for example. So it's very similar to BC Auto. So I can choose a seed node using the middle mouse button, just like before. And once I've chosen that, I'm going to use my left mouse button to click on individual nodes to select a diagonal boundary condition like that. Okay, but there are a few restrictions on this. For example, I cannot now click on this particular node. You get an error message saying that you're trying to over constrain the boundary conditions, because you cannot constrain all four cells of a single, all four nodes of a single cell. Okay. There's also one more function to this, so I'm gonna get rid of this. So if you press the space bar while you're in BC manual, you can see a notification here saying auto generation of shortest path between base and target nodes activated. Pretty much. So now, rather than selecting individual nodes, I can simply select a node and it will generate the shortest path between my base node. In this case, my base node was my seed node, and I selected this particular node, so it automatically drew the shortest path between those two nodes. I'm going to show you a few more functions here. So if I if I've already selected, so if this is my current case, I've selected the seed node and I've also selected one other node on my boundary condition. I can now change the base node by right-clicking on one of those nodes, and now I can ask for a shortest path between that base node and another selected node, just like that. So I'm gonna do that again. I change my base node using the right mouse button, and I ask it to draw a shortest path between that node, that base node, and the new node that I just selected. Once you've done that, you can move the seed node down, and you can call the drape function. So it drape part of the net, just like that, and you can trim the net. And yeah, so that is another option. What else is there? So yeah, so like I said, always refer to the help section, especially when it comes to the BC manual mode. There are all these tricks and shortcuts I explained in the help menu. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go to a more complex mold shape. So here you can see that there is a cutout in this particular mold. So how we're going to drape this is, first I am going to increase the resolution of the net so that I can capture this feature. So I'm going to go to the net alteration function. I'm going to hold the left shift and I am going to press the left mouse button to create a cutout, just like that. Then I'm going to set the boundary conditions just like before. I'm going to press the down button so that the seed node makes contact with the mold, and then I am going to drape. Let's see what happens over here. So let's let it drape. Right, so this is what I wanted to show you. So it becomes a bit tricky when it comes to draping around features. So sometimes it will ask you to manually drape some of the nodes. In this case, and these nodes will be in pink color, as you can see here. So you will use the left mouse button. You will click and drag to bring these nodes into contact with the mold. You can also sort of move these nodes around. Be careful when you're moving these nodes around. Sometimes this will prevent you from getting a final solution. Just have some common sense when doing so. Make sure that you're not over shearing any of the cells. Once you've done that, you press the enter button. It'll ask you to manually drape any other pink color nodes as well, which so I drape it like that, and I continue with the drape like that. So once again, you can have a look at the shear distribution just like that. Yeah, so you can also obviously you can disable the mold mesh to have a look at the shear distribution. So the next or the last function that I want to talk about, the software. Okay, so there's also a stop drape function. So if at any point you feel like you want to stop draping your mold, if at any point you feel like you want to stop draping, you can call the stop drape function. I will show you how that works. So you're draping, but turns out it's taking too much time. You want to do something else. You just call on stop drape. Once you call stop drape, please reset the net if you want to drape on the same mold. If you're switching molds at this point, then it is fine. You can continue on just like that. So let's quickly drape a sphere with multiple layers. I want to show you a few things about the thickness generation. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to increase the drape resolution so that we'll get a solution quicker. So if you go to BC Auto, you press on down and you drape. Slide drape. Once the drape is complete, we are going to call the add net function. I am also going to increase the thickness to 5 over here just for the purpose of this video. So this is not going to change the thickness of this current layer, it will change the thickness of the new net that it generates. So when I click generate here, it's now going to model the thickness. You can see some of the areas the thickness model is not that accurate. That is because we're using a very low net resolution. So if you want a more accurate thickness model, I advise that you use a very fine net resolution. So let's do that. Let's use a resolution of say 21. It's just a random value that I just guessed. Let's also rotate this by 45 degrees. Let's move the net to the center of the mold. That is close enough. And let's drape again. Yeah, so let's wait till this is draped. I guess one other thing to look out for is this DFM functionality in the Shear Plus DFM option. Please refer to the help section. It will explain what this DFM functions are. I'll walk you through it soon. So now that we've completed the drape, let's see how the thickness model looks like for this particular mold shape or for this particular net. You'll find that the software will slow down considerably during the thickness modeling. This is because this is a very computationally expensive process. Yeah, so you can see that there is a much better thickness modeling. If I zoom in, you can see compared to the previous layer, we don't see any gaps in the thickness model. So yeah, so that is really all what I wanted to show through this tutorial. If you do have any questions, please contact me. My contact details should be available in this through the software when you first open the software, and also available on the website as well where the software is hosted. Thank you very much.